speaking so that you picked up for the broadcast. Please also be aware that when you turn your microphone on, it will turn the previous speaker microphone off. So only press the button when you're ready to speak. With regards to public speaking, I would like to inform everyone that given the sensitivity of the Boxted Bridge application, I've decided to depart from our approved protocol and allow more speakers to address the committee. A public speaking procedure states that only a total of 5 to 6 speakers can address the committee, which are a parish or a district representative, 1 objector and 1 supporter, the applicant or his agent, and finally the division member or members where the application is located. But on this particular occasion, I will allow up to 10 speakers, 7 against and 3 in favour of the application. Those against will have 3 minutes each to address the committee. I've been led to believe that their presentation will be each raising different points and issues, so to avoid repetition. Very much hope this is the case, but if it isn't, I will intervene and ask to wind up. I will then invite Mr. Clive Woodruff, Structure Manager from Essex Highways, Mr. Vasilios Papadimos, Principal Engineer from Essex Highways, and Mr. Peter Dawson, Built Environment Manager from Place Service to speak, who will have up to 5 minutes each. I will, however, allow them more time if they need to clarify some of the points made by the previous speakers. Members will have received a number of different representations from lobbying parties, and I've ensured that officers have had sight of these. One of the concerns raised was around members' understanding on the new duties on planning authorities of the strengthened legal obligation set out in Section 85 of the Countryside and Right-of-Ways Act 2000, as amended by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act in 2023. I would like to put on record that full training session was delivered to this committee by Beverly McLean, a National Landscape Planning Officer at the Suffolk and Essex Coast and Heath National Landscape. That includes Dedham Vale. Because of this significance, I extended the invite for this training to all members of the Council. And I can confirm that all the members of the committee have received the training, and those who could make it have actually watched it, a recording of it. And finally, we're not expecting a fire drill this morning, so if the alarm does sound, please follow officers out of the building to gather in the cathedral grounds. The exit is over there. We now go to agenda itself, membership apologies, substitution, declaration of interest. Do we have any apologies, Emma?
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies have been received.
Any declaration of interest, members? Councillor Thorogood.
Yeah, I'd just like to make it known that I know Mr. Ed Morton, one of the speakers. We both live in Coggeshall, and his youngest son and my son both attended the same primary school some years ago, and I know him through that relationship. And I would say hello to him in the street if I saw him or in the pub. Okay, thank you.
So, for the record, you are registering a non-registrable interest. Thank you. I would also like to say that I am Essex County Council representative on the Dedham Vale, used to be Area of Standard National Beauties, but I've not attended meetings for the last 4 years, specifically because of this application has been bubbling away for all that time. We now go to the minutes, agenda item 2 of the 28th of March. Members, are you happy for me to sign them as a true record? Agenda item 3, identification of items involving public speaking. Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. For item 4.1, Boxted Bridge, Boxted, we have Councillor John Hunt speaking against the application on behalf of Boxted Parish Council, Ed Morton speaking against the application virtually, Lucinda de Jassy speaking against the application, Anne Brown speaking against the application, Chaz Baisley speaking against the application, a statement read on behalf of Nikki O'Hagan against the application, local member Councillor Lewis Barber. On behalf of the applicant, Clive Woodruff speaking for the application. On behalf of the applicant, Basilius Papadimas speaking for the application. The agent on behalf of the applicant, Peter Dawson speaking for the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now go to agenda item 4, County Council Development, Boxted Bridge, Boxted, to consider the replacement of the bridge and associated highways works involving realignment of the junction, improvements with the width increase of the carriageway. This is in the hands of Tom Sycamore. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. If members have attention to the addendum received, this includes late responses received from Stoke-by-Naylands Parish Council. It's their 5th and 6th supplementary responses to the application against. Their points raised are to be noted by members. We also have some further representations also received, which are to be noted by members. And the number of representations and signatories of the online petition against the application has also increased. Numbers are included. If we move to the presentation, so this application, it seeks the full replacement of Boxted Bridge. So a full replacement and reconstruction of the bridge involving a widening and realignment of the highway and improvements to the adjacent junction. Boxted Bridge is located on Wick Road and provides a crossing over the River Stour. The bridge straddles the Essex-Suffolk border and it meets with the junction of Wick Road, Skyhall Hill and Lower Farm Road on its southern side. An identical planning application has also been submitted to Baber and Mid-Suffolk District Council as the proposed development straddles the administrative county border. The bridge is located within close proximity to residential properties, Boxted Mill, which is just here, grade 2 listed building, and Island Cottage just to the southeast on Skyhall Hill. There is a road sign which is within the rear garden of Skyhall of Island Cottage, just where this GP is identified on the map here. This is a non-designated heritage asset, a road sign. The bridge itself, as existing, is also a non-designated heritage asset on the Colchester City Council's local list. The bridge is located within the Dedham Vale National Landscape. The surrounding area is characterised by arable fields, woodlands, copses and country lanes lined by mature trees and hedgerows. The village of Boxted is located to the southwest and Thorrington Street just to the north at the other end of up towards Wick Road. The bridge lies within flood zone 3 and Langham Waterworks local wildlife site is located to the immediate east of the bridge. This is the bridge today. It's a steel girder bridge constructed in 1897 by a local engineer, George Double. It is trapezoidal in form, consists of a single span deck supported by 2 substantial brick abutments at either side of the waterway. The parapets or the bridge walls are formed of steel. They're painted in dark green. The accesses are flanked by red brick piers with decorative granite stone copings on top. The deck is an arched shape profile and the south side is slightly wider than the north. The bridge does not have any pedestrian footpaths. This is a view of the bridge from the north side looking south on Wick Road. You can see the humped carriageway. Then onto the bridge itself, looking south, you can see Boxted Mill on the right-hand side of the photograph. This is the grade 2 listed building and the mill ponds adjacent. The bridge from the south side looking north. Again, the mill pond is on the west side there. And then looking east, the River Stour below. And then these are of the brick piers and the existing bridge with the coping stones. And this is an example of one of the abutments of the bridge underneath. This is the bridge today. It's currently been closed to all traffic, both road and pedestrian. And this is on the south side. And then this is on Skyhall Hill. So looking west to the junction where the bridge is to the immediate right-hand side, if you turned right. And on the left, you can see the designated or non-designated heritage asset, the historic signpost. The general arrangement drawing this is the proposed replacement bridge. The form would be trapezoidal, similar to the existing. Modern materials would be used for much of the design, including the bridge deck, which would be flatter, and it would be flanked by reinforced concrete pilasters with reclaimed red brick cladding, topped with granite coping stones. The deck would comprise reinforced concrete and steel beam composite deck with reinforced concrete pile foundations. The deck would be supported on piled foundations behind the existing abutments, and this would be retained and shortened to provide a mammal ledge. That's the gray is the existing abutments, which would be shortened. The height of the parapets in relation to the road would be 1.4 meters, compared with the existing bridge, which stands at 1.2 meters. This drawing shows the proposed bridge overlaid onto the existing. So the existing carriageway is the diagonal red lines. The yellow is the proposed widened carriageway. And then the pink areas are areas of proposed hard standing, included on each end of the bridge and on the sides of the carriageway on the bridge itself. The width of the northern side of the carriageway is proposed to be increased to 7.63 meters from the existing 4.77, and on the southern side to 10.1 meters compared with 6.7 on the southern side. And the northern side is proposed to be realigned and widened to be able to fit the form of the proposed bridge. The southern side is proposed to be widened to accommodate the structure as well and allow for larger vehicles to cross the structure and navigate the junction into Skyhall Hill and down Lower Farm Road. The hard standing areas would be included on either side of the carriageway. This is the existing and the proposed section drawings. Again, you can see the proposed hard standing on the bottom drawing here on either side of the carriageway. In terms of materials, the proposed deck, as I mentioned before, it would be comprised of filler beam deck, which is essentially a reinforced concrete encased steel beam section. And this would be supported on piled foundations built behind the existing abutments. Parapets would also be reinforced concrete, which you can see in the drawing here, with steel cladding painted in the same dark green color as the existing. The pilasters existing, constructed of red brick, proposed would be reinforced concrete with brick cladding. The applicant has stated that attempts would be made during the demolition to reuse existing bricks, and if unusable, reclaimed bricks would be used, which have been identified. A source has been identified, should I say. Coping stones would be new and made of granite, and a new cast plaque is proposed to be recessed into the brickwork. The existing wing walls are constructed of brick. Proposed again would be reinforced concrete with brick cladding, and reused or reclaimed bricks would also be used where possible. And white painted steel post and rail is proposed over the wing walls to replicate existing post and rail, which is on the existing wing walls. Another feature would be bolted rivets on the parapets to replicate the existing, although these would not be functional, but just for aesthetic purposes. So the application has received a large number of objections from both statutory and non-statutory consultees. It has received over 200 letters of representation from individuals and groups and organisations, which are all listed on page 65 of the agenda. An online petition organised by the Save Our Bridge campaign has received over 8,300 signatures. The overarching point of objection, amongst other things, is that the existing bridge could be repaired instead of replaced, and the proposal fails to provide clear or adequate justification for the dismantling and replacement of a non-designated heritage asset of high historic and landscape significance, and also that the proposal is overscaled for this sensitive site and it would cause needless harm to the Dedham Vale national landscape. There are also other points of objection which are considered and included on page 65. In terms of need, it is necessary to look at the history of the bridge. An assessment of the structure was carried out in 1992, which found the bridge to have a live load capacity of 3 tons. A weight restriction was recommended, but it was never implemented. Inspections then between 2012 and 2018, they found a number of elements to be in a deteriorating condition due to insufficient maintenance over an extended period of time. A principal inspection report was carried out in 2018, which found the bridge to be in poor condition with moderate to severe defects and damages, and the structure in a poor condition overall, with one or more functions potentially being severely affected. In 2018, an option study was then undertaken by the applicant, the Highway Authority, regarding feasibility of all possible options, ranging from a do-nothing approach to a full replacement. And these can be seen on page 68 of the agenda. In 2020, a feasibility study was then undertaken to further investigate these options. This study considered full replacement and reconstruction as the only suitable option, given the safety concerns associated with deterioration of the bridge, and it was then progressed to the detailed design stage. The planning application was then submitted in December 21, and a further principal inspection report was undertaken in 2023, which deemed this structure as an immediate risk structure, and that was when it was then closed to all users. Representation has been received from Chartered Engineer Ed Morton of the Morton Partnership, who has carried out his own assessment of the bridge and disagrees with certain elements of the 2018 principal inspection. For example, the main edge girders, considering them to not be in an unreasonable condition, but in need of careful repair or repainting. It also considers there to be no evidence that the existing foundations are unsatisfactory, and further investigation should be done to ascertain if such elements could be retained. The applicant, as Highway Authority, states that the condition of the existing foundations are unknown, and extensive high-risk investigations would be needed to be able to determine their condition. And such excavations would require potential river diversion. The cost would be substantial, and they have also stated that as part of their duty to uphold and maintain the safety and capacity of the highway, the bridge must comply with modern loading requirements as laid out in the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, national standards and Euro codes. And even if an environmental weight restriction was implemented, the structure would still need to be designed to carry full loading capacity. A departure from these standards, according to the applicant, and the introduction of a weight limit would require justification and approval from Essex County Council, which according to the applicant would not be suitable given the proposal put forward would be able to withstand full load capacity and would accord with modern standards. Another element of required modern standards relates to the width. The applicant states there is currently a risk of head-on collisions due to poor visibility resulting from skewed alignment and vertical profile of the bridge. They state the existing girders and pilasters show signs of vehicle impact damage resulting from where vehicles have to make a sharp turn when entering or exiting Sky Hall Hill, where the road abuts the bridge on a sharp turn. Proposal would increase the width, and it's been put forward in accordance with required vehicle size recommendations recommended by standards. This does include fire engine and refuse vehicles. It is not considered that these vehicle types would necessarily use the bridge. However, other similar types would use it, such as oil delivery vehicles or local farm traffic. And the width to accommodate a wider turning circle and improved alignment is considered to be justified in this sense. The Highway Authority consider the proposal to be the only viable option that would meet modern standards given the existing condition of the bridge and the cost to further investigate the unknown elements. The Planning Authority consider that a need has been demonstrated in the planning application and justified insofar that the proposal would meet the modern safety standards and would allow the Highway Authority to fulfill its statutory duty to maintain the public highway. In terms of heritage impact, the bridge is located within close proximity to Boxted Mill, which you can see in the photo here looking to the west of the bridge. Boxted Mill, as I mentioned, Grade 2 listed building. The road sign in the rear garden of Island Cottage is a non-designated heritage asset, and the bridge itself is also a non-designated heritage asset. The existing bridge is considered to contribute positively to the setting of Boxted Mill. The application is accompanied by a heritage assessment, which considers full retention and sympathetic repair to be the preferred option. And if the bridge should require altering, then principal features should be retained where possible. Where features are not retained, this should be fully justified, and features which are of the same aesthetic and construction should be installed. Since this time, the proposal has been through a number of amendments, and it was considered earlier versions did not accurately replicate the appearance of the existing bridge, and it lacked any specific design detail. The proposal now, however, put forward before you is considered to more closely replicate the appearance of the existing bridge, albeit it is wider and it is flatter, and use of modern materials would be used. However, it is considered that the proposal overall would have a less than substantial harm to the setting of Boxted Mill. This is a view shared by the council's historic building consultant, who considers the proposal would have an inevitable degree of less than substantial harm, which must then be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal as per NPPF paragraph 215. Such benefits are considered to be the provision of a safer bridge crossing the River Stour, which would meet modern safety and highway standards, whilst also providing a safer junction turning into Skyhall Hill. And it is considered that a sympathetic design has been put forward, which has been influenced and shaped by the original bridge, and a bespoke design which reduces the degree of harm to the Boxted Mill setting. On balance, the Planning Authority considers that the public benefits are considered to outweigh the harm to the setting, given the bespoke design. Similarly, the proposal is considered to result in a change to the setting of the non-designated road sign, as well as harm to the bridge, of course, due to its total loss. NPPF paragraph 216 requires a balanced judgment to be made having regard to the scale of any harm or loss and the significance of non-designated heritage assets. Both assets are considered to be of local significance, and whilst the loss of the bridge would be unfortunate, it is again considered that the public benefits and modern safety standards that the Highway Authority have a duty to uphold would outweigh the harm. Moving on to AONB, the National Landscape Impact. As I mentioned, the bridge is located within the Dedham Vale National Landscape. It's located on this red dot here. The National Landscape is the red shaded area. Section 85 of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000 requires planning authorities to seek to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of national landscapes. DEFRA provides guidance which makes clear that as far as reasonably practical, relevant authorities should seek to avoid harm. The question of whether or not there would be harm to the national landscape is a question of planning judgment, and it is important to consider that the proposal as a whole, including any harmful elements, as well as any mitigation or enhancement, either through design or by way of planning conditions. Regard should also be had to long-term as well as short-term effects, though long-term effects are considered to hold a greater weight, and how extensive such long-term effects would likely be spatially. The temporary nature of impacts, particularly during construction, are not considered to conflict with Section 85, considering that they are temporary in nature. The application is supported by a landscape and visual appraisal, and an addendum to this was also provided following amendments to the original design. no further landscape or visual appraisal was provided following the most recent amendments. Now, both LVA and the addendum conclude that the proposal would have a moderate impact on the landscape character. Much local representation has been received as well as objections from Dedham Vale and Suffolk National Landscapes, Colchester City Council and Boxted and Stoke-by-Nayland Parish Councils, who consider the proposal to also be contrary to Section 85 of the Crow Act. The council's landscape consultant was asked to comment on the proposal's meeting with Section 85, or compliance, should I say. The consultant considered that the most recent amendments to the design that does now reflect the existing bridge, which demonstrates consideration for conserving features of the national landscape that are locally valued, whilst also delivering a new bridge that would meet infrastructure needs. They also consider that the use of reclaimed materials where possible would contribute towards conserving and enhancing the landscape within this location. They consider that the surrounding area is enclosed by vegetation, which would reduce the geographical extent of visual impacts. When considering the ability of the national landscape to absorb any potential impacts, it is considered the development would occupy a small area of landscape with a proposal that has been designed to reflect the existing character. The consultant raises no objection and considers that the landscape and visual impacts would be localized and would be able to be absorbed by the landscape due to the sensitively designed bridge, which would not thus conflict with Section 85. Dedham Vale and Suffolk and Essex National Landscapes consider the proposal would not avoid harm to the landscape and scenic qualities. And if approved, Essex County Council would not meet their duty to seek to further the purpose of conserving and enhancing the natural beauty of the area. It is considered that the proposed design has taken cues from the existing bridge, and whilst many of the materials would be replicas instead of originals, effort has been made to conserve the original aesthetic of the original bridge, and a commitment to reusing original materials where possible has been provided. It is acknowledged that the dimensions of the proposed bridge are greater than the existing footprint, though this is not considered to impact the national landscape. A number of landscape-related conditions are also included to provide additional mitigation from a landscape perspective. Planning policies generally do not support development within national landscapes unless in exceptional circumstances and where it can be demonstrated the development would be within the public interest. As already discussed, it is considered the proposed works to the bridge are necessary to allow the Highway Authority to fulfill its statutory duty. The bridge is in its current form does not meet such standards. The increased width and alignment would improve the junction and intersection, and it would provide a wider turning circle and improve visibility, preventing vehicles from striking the bridge piers or the opposite boundary wall of Island Cottage to the south. Other public benefits include hard standing on either side of the carriageway, which would allow pedestrians to safely cross the bridge. These benefits would not be achievable if the existing bridge was repaired. It is considered on balance that as a result of the most recent design amendments, the proposal would not harm the Dedham Vale national landscape. Although objections have been received who consider otherwise, it is considered that the special qualities and intrinsic character and beauty of the national landscape has been considered and has shaped and informed the most recent bespoke design, which therefore avoids harm and conserves the natural beauty of the area. Proposal is considered to be justified. It represents an exceptional circumstance in the public interest, which is primarily road safety, with a series of other benefits, including the benefits that I listed previously, which outweighs any temporary local impacts that would arise during the construction phase. Representations have raised concern that the widening would increase HGV movements through the national landscape, using the road as a rat run, causing risk to pedestrians and other road users, as well as damaging local country roads. As I already mentioned, the width of the proposed bridge is not wide enough to meet the minimum HGV width requirement, and unsuitable for HGV signs are already in place on the roads leading to the bridge. The applicant has confirmed that these would not be removed should permission be granted and the bridge be constructed. No change to the surrounding road network is proposed as part of the proposal, which are all unsuitable for HGV roads. It is not considered, therefore, that the proposal would increase HGVs through the area. Further concern has been raised around the amount of hard standing in the proposed design, which is shown again in the pink on the screen. The hard standing areas on the southern side are occupied by hedgerows at present, which you can see in the photo, should I say, and would be replanted at the end of the works. On the northern side, the proposed hard standing area would be a combination of hard standing and verge. A condition has been attached requiring further details to submit to discourage parking. This hard standing has been dictated by the extent of the proposed deck and its foundations, and is therefore considered necessary in the design. The proposal overall is considered acceptable from a highway perspective and is not considered likely to increase vehicle movements, particularly HGV movements, through the area. As I mentioned before, the bridge is currently closed following the 2023 inspection, which found the existing bridge to be an immediate risk structure. This is the current diversion, 6-mile diversion route, which would likely remain in perpetuity if the bridge was not replaced and remained closed. Moving on to flood risk. The site is within flood zone 3, which is shown on the plan on screen, which is a high risk of flooding area. It's considered to be in flood zone 3B, categorized as functional floodplain. Sequential and exception tests have been carried out, which are detailed in the report, page 92. The application is supported by a flood risk assessment, which seeks to demonstrate the proposal would be safe throughout its lifetime from all sources of flooding and would not increase flood risk elsewhere. It is considered the proposal is for essential infrastructure and could not be located anywhere else. Therefore, it is acceptable development within flood zone 3B. Both the Environment Agency and Lead Local Flood Authority raised no objection to the proposal on flood risk grounds. Condition has also been attached, condition 23, requiring a surface and foul water drainage scheme to be submitted prior to commencement to further minimize the risk of flooding and any possible pollution of the River Stour. In terms of ecology, a number of objections have been received, including from Essex Wildlife Trust, considering the proposal to have potential to impact water voles, and further surveys should be undertaken. Questions have also been raised around the validity of the eel search, which was in the PEA, Preliminary Ecological Assessment, which reports no eels present during surveys, whereas the EA have recorded over 250 eels since 2000 at their monitoring point at Boxted Mill. Conditions have therefore been recommended, requiring further water vole and eel surveys to be undertaken prior to development. It is not considered that the proposal would have any adverse impact on any European designated sites, and Langham Waterworks, whilst located immediately to the east, and is considered to have potential to be impacted during the construction phase, though best practice and planning conditions are considered to be sufficient to ensure no impact. A number of biodiversity enhancement measures are proposed. Biodiversity net gain is not a statutory requirement as per Schedule 7A, as the application was submitted before this became mandatory. Local planning policies do, however, seek to maximize opportunities and achieve 10% net gain where appropriate. The preliminary ecological appraisal recommends soft landscaping, bird and bat boxes within the site, and condition 17 has been recommended, which requires a submission of a biodiversity enhancement strategy prior to commencement. The applicant has also committed to providing a memorandum of understanding, laying out its commitment to securing off-site biodiversity net gain area, which would overall seek to provide at least a 10% net gain in combination with other on-site enhancements. Council's ecology consultant raises no objection to the proposal. 3 Category C low-value trees or tree groups are proposed to be removed. category C is considered low value. The new bridge, tree protection measures are proposed for all retained trees. 1-to-1 replacement planting as an absolute minimum is considered appropriate, which could be provided via the condition 10 recommendation, which requires submission of a remedial landscape scheme. So to summarize, the application is considered to be a difficult judgment in planning terms. I think it's accepted across the board from all parties involved that the bridge is in a poor condition and it does require something to be done. The question is whether full replacement as proposed is absolutely necessary or whether the existing bridge in its poor condition could be repaired. On one hand, the proposal is considered to cause a less than substantial degree of harm to the listed building, Boxted Mill, given that there would be a change to its setting. The historic value of the bridge itself is also acknowledged, and it provides an example of a bridge constructed by a local engineer in the late 1800s. Its replacement would result in the loss of a non-designated heritage asset. On the other hand, the Highway Authority has a duty to ensure the safety of roads and bridges, and as the competent authority considers replacement to be the only viable option to ensure modern safety standards are met, repairing the existing bridge on its current footprint would mean the junction would remain at a tight angle with poor visibility and would be a departure from modern standards, and is considered the overarching need is an exceptional circumstance which provides justification for the selected option. It would result in a range of public benefits, which I've laid out. It is considered the design is bespoke, and whilst not being the same original materials, it does take cues and inspiration from the design, and it is considered to conform to relevant local planning policies and Section 85 of the Crow Act. The applicant has gone through an optioneering process and has considered as the competent authority that this is the most appropriate and viable option, which is therefore before you. The recommendation is approval subject to a broad range of planning conditions and a memorandum of understanding to secure off-site biodiversity net gain. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your presentation. We now go to public speakers, and the first one is Councillor John Hunt on behalf of Boxted Parish Council. If you'd like to make your way to the before you begin, I will take the first three speakers and then I will ask Tom to address any points that are raised. Then I will ask for the other three speakers to come forward. And then the last one will be the division member, Councillor Lewis Barber. You have 3 minutes, Councillor Hunt, and you will get a prompt of 30 seconds left. There is also a display on the wall there. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I speak to you as Councillor of Boxted Parish Council and with the support of Stoke-by-Nayland Parish Council. I'm opening the speeches today to deliver a brief introduction to the planning decision before you, although that was a wonderfully thorough introduction. Thank you for that. You'll hear from several people today behind me from differing perspectives and varied professions, but all making the same point, that this application to replace Broxted Bridge with a new, larger bridge is fundamentally flawed. Flawed in how it has been conceived, proposed and designed. Further, the entire process has been a bit of a public relations nightmare for both highways and ECC. Today, you have the opportunity to start to put right some of those issues. Boxted Bridge, as we've heard, sits at the convergence of 3 narrow country lanes connecting Boxted Parish to Stoke-by-Nayland and Higham across the Stour. It is not a commuter route and it is not a commercial artery. These are roads that are quite rightly designated not suitable for HGVs. And either side of Boxted Bridge sit several smaller and narrower culvert bridges, crossing ditches that drain the Stour floodplain. The Stour floodplain, yes, this does regularly flood, often isolating the bridges for weeks at a time during wet years. These narrow, tranquil lanes through this, the Dedham Vale National Landscape, are a safe and crucial route for pedestrians and cyclists across the Stour, with alternative routes being 6-mile-plus detours on busy and dangerous roads. The bridge itself is in its own right a pedestrian destination for the wonderful viewpoint of the River Stour, and particularly the mill ponds of Boxted Mill. In this proposal to replace the bridge and the resistance to consider or even test an alternative, despite strong opinion to the contrary, and seeking to ignore the heritage and social amenity of this structure. It is something that's not lost on the 8,300 plus signatories of the Save Our Bridge petition. Boxted Bridge was built at a time when infrastructure projects were not just pieces of utilitarian necessity, but each one an architectural masterpiece. Since 1992, highways have known that this bridge needed attention and repair. A 3-ton weight limit was recommended, as we've heard, but this was never imposed. Repeated inspections over the 30 years since have recommended remedial works and mitigation schemes, but none of these were ever actioned. Highways have demonstrated a willful neglect for this structure and then justified its need for replacement because of that neglect. This history of neglect is a material planning consideration and reminds us of other high-profile cases of neglect being used to justify redevelopment elsewhere in the country. This is compounded by the insistence that the replacement needs to be built to unnecessarily stringent requirements to carry theoretical orders of magnitude more traffic than this bridge has ever needed to carry. The roads surrounding this bridge will always be unsuitable for HGVs. So why are we wasting such resources on such an unnecessary development and also desecrating such a sensitive location in the process? This is your opportunity to send a message that we must insist that we fully explore all other avenues and properly investigate the viability of repair, or at worst, sympathetic like-for-like replacement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt, well in time. The next speaker is Ed Morton, which I believe is going to be online.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
I think officers are just trying to get audio connection, Mr.
Hello.
Morton.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think that's better. Would you mind?
Hello?
Yeah,
Can you
that's
hear me?
better. Yeah, yeah,
All
thank
right,
you. Mr. Morton, you'll have 3 minutes and you'll, one of the clerk will give you a prompt in 30 seconds there's left. And if you can see the chamber, there is a clock display on the wall.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Ed Morton and I am a conservation accredited engineer. My experience includes acting as lead consultant for the £3.5 million repairs to the Iron Bridge in Shropshire for English Heritage. Recent guidance related to the demolition of historic structures, including non-designated heritage assets, such as Boxted Bridge, has been published by the engineering institutions. This is not only about saving structures, but also promoting a more sustainable approach to management of natural resources, which include the embodied carbon of existing structures. I assessed Boxted Bridge in 2022 and then again with Essex Highways in 2023. I've provided written observations in letters setting out my opinion that the bridge can be retained and repaired. I've attended 2 meetings with Essex Highways in 2024 and a further one in February 2025. In these meetings, it was advised that the council's intention was to continue to evaluate repair options for the bridge while still proceeding with the application for replacement. Despite this statement, there appears to have been little, if any, effort to pursue repairs. I've asked Highways if they've carried out their own analysis of the bridge rather than rely on the 1992 basic calculations by Taywood Engineering. Assessment of structures has moved on considerably in the last 30 years. Highways have advised that they have not undertaken any official analysis since no instruction has been received to do so. I'm not clear if Highways have asked the county this question. If they haven't, then why not? It is a reasonably straightforward option to assess the structure and its original capability using current analytical tools and to see what redundancy or spare capacity it has. This would allow a more informed view of the structure and thus its capability in its current condition, and could potentially, in my view, allow reopening, even if for pedestrians and cyclists at this time. In May 2024, I recommended that Highways consider dynamic testing of the bridge, a method to assess the flexibility of the structure, which provides a more realistic understanding of the load capabilities of the bridge and thus its potential for reuse. Highways confirmed in August 2024 meeting that they intended to commission this. It seems incredible that some 8 months after this confirmation, the field work has not even started. I would remind all that the Place Services Heritage Assessment advised the bridge is considered to be of significance, and their preferred approach was the bridge fully retained with sympathetic repairs. They continued, should this approach not be viable, then it will be should be robustly justified. I do not consider this justification as being provided and would urge the committee to refuse this application and that a repair option be pursued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morton. Again, dead on time. The next speaker is Mrs. Lucinda Zay. If you'd like to make your way to the pew in the front there, thank you. No need to repeat, you've got 3 minutes and Emma will give you a prompt in 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman, for the invitation to speak. May I use this opportunity on behalf of our campaign to focus on a conflict of interest? There is an unquestioned priority to comply with modern road layout standards and achieve full highways loading, and there is a statutory duty actively to seek to enhance the protected qualities of a designated national landscape. HGVs began using sat-navs to cut through the AONB around 2014. They did a lot of damage to our garden wall, manoeuvring at the junction, and it took my sister and me 3 years to persuade Highways to install unsuitable for HGVs signage. But that did then solve the problem. Essex Highways reviewed the situation in 2017 and found they'd neglected maintenance since 1992. They commissioned an inspection and an option study in 2018. Nothing happened for 2 years, but officers then took the decision to pursue only one strategy: upgrade to modern standards and demolish the bridge. This decision was unminuted and never explained, although much justification has been offered in hindsight. Our consultants, Hayden Evans, well known to ECC, have, however, shown that the process failed to carry out a fair assessment of alternatives to demolition. The decision to exclude them was not rationally justified. The impression of a conflicted auctioneering process was strongly reinforced by Highways' apparent misunderstanding of independent expert advice. Their own consultants positively recommended a low-risk alternative to demolition and provided drawings. These show clearly how the superstructure could be renewed to retain the abutments, look and geometry of the existing bridge. That independent recommendation was somehow construed as confirming that there was no alternative to demolition. Our own eminent specialist, Ed Morton, carried out an inspection in parallel to Highways. He came to the conclusion that repair could not be ruled out and the whole superstructure might not need to be replaced. There is no doubt that a sensitive repair option does exist. Nevertheless, as Highways explained most recently in February, their strategy has always been to achieve full Highways loading, which is why they maintain there is no alternative to demolition. Our campaign questions the need to design a massive new bridge and junction to standards fit for the heaviest traffic, when the whole area is designated unsuitable for HGVs. We are asking members to further the purposes of the protected Dedham Vale National Landscape.
Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to make your way back. We now ask Tom Sycamore to address some of the points raised during the last 3 speakers.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to begin the point around the optioneering, the applicant has proceeded with the option before you, fully aware that there are alternative options that were considered. The applicant has gone through these options and as the competent highway authority has considered all of the options at that stage. The details on how they've come to this option is included in the report. A planning judgment has been made on the proposal that's been put forward, which is the replacement option. This, it considers the option, the planning judgment considers the option to be acceptable in planning terms. This is a decision made by the recommendation made by the planning authority. I think the point on neglect or deliberate neglect is probably not accurate. I don't think a highway authority would deliberately neglect a bridge, which I think is unfair to say. However, it is acknowledged that it was in 1992 flagged to be only have a live load capacity of 3 tons. The bridge itself was designated as a non-designated heritage asset in 2020. So not that that's a reason, but in 1992 it was not listed. I think on the design, again, I refer back to the report. The design is considered sympathetic, and it meets modern standards. The Highway Authority have gone through the optioneering process. In terms of HGVs, as mentioned in that speech, HGVs do not use the road, and it's not considered that the proposal would lead them to then use the road if the surrounding roads are still unsuitable for HGVs. I think the point is that the Highway Authority are not putting this proposal forward to enable HGVs. That's not the goal. And on flooding, it is acknowledged, yes, it is a high risk flooding area, but the proposal would not increase that level. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your responses. The next speaker is Ms. Sam Brown. If you'd like to make your way to the queue in front. There is a need for me to remind you of the format. You're well acquainted with that.
Good morning, members. I am Anne Brown, Planning Representative for the Dedham Vale Society. I need to declare that I'm a retired Essex County Councillor for Constable Division. This bridge is at the heart of Dedham Vale National Landscape. You may know it as the Dedham Vale Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. It is the only one we...
And can I...
Sorry. Further back. Yes, of course. Thank you. The bridge is at the heart of the Dedham Vale National Landscape. You may know it as the Dedham Vale Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. It is the only one we have in Essex. It is protected by law, which states that any development must enhance its beauty. This bridge is sited on the water meadows of the River Stour, the home of Constable, Gainsborough and Munnings. It is of national significance, and this is shown by the many thousands of supporters against the bridge's replacement. Boxted Bridge is beside a stunning mill pond and has a listed building and listed bridges around it. The whole setting is a tranquil, tiny, rural backwater on the river, providing walkers and cyclists a bridge to look over and see the views of the wildlife, the trees for which Dedham Vale is so famous. There is no need for a replacement unless there are real safety concerns with the bridge's structure proved by an independent expert team. Repair must first be fully investigated. Even then, the bridge should be replaced with like for like. The application by Ringway Jacobs is not taking enough care and does not reflect the site's importance. Their report states that utility vehicles use the bridge, but as it separates Essex from Suffolk, services don't routinely use the bridge. They haven't taken advice from the National Landscapes Planning Team, which is partially funded by Essex, on what design of bridge would be acceptable for this site. Historically, the bridge was built with a hump to allow commercial river traffic to pass beneath. This shape now helps to reduce speeding. Changing this would cause levels around the crossing to be modified considerably, increasing the risk of accidents and surface water flooding. Land will need to be compulsorily purchased. Shrubs and trees will be removed, spoiling the rural green banks, which will take years to recover. The law demands that in a national landscape, we do not damage it. This was recently endorsed by the Deputy Prime Minister with the well-known Manningtree Station issue. Assuming that the current bridge is found to be beyond economic repair, then the only option is to replace it like for like, not the wider, bigger, more urban design that's been submitted. The Dedham Vale Society consider Essex should not be encouraging larger vehicles to use these tiny lanes. This bridge needs to be an exception, and this planning application should be refused.
Well on time. Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. The next speaker is Mr. Chas Beasley. If you'd like to make your way to the pew. Again, you've got 3 minutes and the clerk will give a prompt of 30 seconds.
Good morning. If you look at the drawings for this proposal, you'll see that using an off-the-shelf concrete bridge involves raising the road level at both of its ends. At the Suffolk end, the resulting narrow ramp with 4-foot drops either side would be lethal for cyclists on this popular cycle route, while the level of the southern approach of the Lower Farm Road, Skyhall Road junction would be raised by nearly a metre. Skyhall Road already slopes down from that junction to the level of a cottage barely 15 metres away from the bridge. So creating a wider, higher bridge approach would increase the gradient of that slope to almost that of a ramp between levels in a multi-storey car park. Any vehicle turning left onto that ramp from the bridge will have a brief period when, although all its wheels touch the ground, its weight is balanced on only 2 of them. And at this point, its center of gravity will shift as it goes down the slope. In a slow-moving car, that shift is barely noticeable. But in a high-sided commercial vehicle with stiff suspension or on a wet road, that shift can easily overcome the grip of the one weight-bearing front wheel, causing the vehicle to lose control. Imagine driving onto one of those car park ramps at 20 or even 5 miles an hour when that ramp is oily, muddy, and has water pouring down it. Depending on how far through the turn you are when you lose traction, you'll either slam into the brick wall, or you'll skate down the ramp into the cottage at the bottom, or if you're in a heavy vehicle, you'll smash through the brick wall and over a 5-foot drop on the other side. Unless you're coming the other way, in which case you'll end up headfirst in the river. As if that wasn't enough of a problem, journey transport planning consultants also point out in their report that the site is highly unusual and that replacing the existing bridge with its highly effective traffic slowing hump with a flat bridge would inevitably encourage higher speeds, thereby increasing both the likelihood and severity of accidents. In spite of its very challenging road layout, the existing bridge has had an almost unblemished safety record for over 100 years. It seems crazy to think of ripping it out and replacing it with a potential death trap that no one in their right mind would sign off a risk assessment for. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to make your way back. I will now ask our clerk, Emma Hunter, to read a statement on behalf of Nikki, again from the Plan Direct.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a speech on behalf of Nikki O'Hagan, Head of Planning Appeals, Heritage and Planning Policy at Planning Direct. You've heard from others today about the various grounds of objection to the proposed replacement of Boxted Bridge, each of which has its foundations in planning legislation, policy and guidance. Ed has explained the need for and lack of robust justification for the total loss of local heritage asset, Boxted Bridge, which he believes to be capable of sensitive repair. NPPF paragraphs 202 and 216 recognise that non-designated assets like Boxted Bridge are an irreplaceable resource and should be conserved. Paragraph 209 provides that where there is a deliberate neglect of a heritage asset, as is the case here, the deteriorated state of the asset should not be taken into account in any decision. These national policies are bolstered locally by Colchester Policy DM16 and Baber Policy LP19. The loss of Boxted Bridge and stark urban appearance of the replacement structure would also cause material harm to the deeply rural setting of the adjacent Grade 2 listed Boxted Mill. Decision makers are legally compelled under the Planning, Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act to have special regard to the desirability of preserving this setting. Anne has discussed the proposal's irreversibly damaging effects on the national landscape. Local planning guidance in the form of the Dedham Vale Management Plan identifies that the local road network as an integral part of the Dedham Vale special character and highlights the harm caused by even minor modern highways features, such as road signage. Harm to the national landscapes is strictly resisted under NPPF paragraphs 189, Colchester Policies EMV1, EMV4 and DM15, and Baber Policy LP18. National landscapes also benefit from the highest levels of statutory protection under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. This legislative protection was notably strengthened in 2023, subsequent to the preparation of the Boxted Bridge proposal. Lucinda and Chaz have discussed highways matters. The proposal fails to preserve important traffic calming features. Compliance with generic standards in this case may actually increase safety risks. Upgrading one isolated segment of a network of rural lanes is not justified by ECC policies relating to local roads. These design deficiencies are detrimental to the safety and proper functioning of the highway, in conflict with NPPF paragraphs 116 and 117, Colchester Policy DM20 and Baber Policy LP29. John has discussed the community value of Boxted Bridge, which has, for more than a century, fulfilled important leisure and amenity functions, visited, used and cherished by walkers, horse riders, artists, tourists and more. Its long-standing community value would be significantly eroded by this proposal, contrary to NPPF paragraphs 98 and 133, Baber Policies LP24 and LP28, and Colchester Policies DM2 and DM15. In Nikki's professional opinion, the proposal is in substantial conflict with various items of planning legislation, policy and guidance. There are insufficient public benefits to outweigh these many conflicts, and planning law consequently dictates that permission must be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, on behalf of Nikki O'Hagan. Tom, would you like to pick up any points that have been raised in the last three speakers?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things. It was mentioned that there are not any real safety concerns. There are real safety concerns, which is shown in the Principal Inspection Report 2023, which has led to the bridge's closure. Highways are considered to be expert competent authority, and a like-for-like bridge would not meet modern standards. So just those points to make. I also, on the section 85 and Dedham Vale, referred to page 84 of the agenda. And again, it has been considered that the proposal would not cause harm, and it would meet section 85 statutory duty. Council advice has been received on this by the planning authority. I think that's everything. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Did you have any comments to make on the policy side that Nikki O'Hagan raised?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I would just add that all relevant planning planning policies have been considered on the officer report. The application that's been put forward has been appraised against all of these policies. A planning judgment has been made, which considers that all of these policies have been adhered to and complied with. Again, planning is a matter of judgment in most cases. That is the judgment that's been made by the planning authority in this scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call the last speaker against the application, Councillor Lewis Barber, who is the member of the division of Constable Division. Councillor Barber, 3 minutes, and then we'll give a prompt of 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee, for listening to representations this morning. I want to start by stressing the point about national landscape legislation. Now, the national landscape is a reasonably limited area compared to the whole of Essex, but carries significant weight in planning legislation. We've heard from Nikki that it's effectively, in planning terms, you call it a serious constraint, but it is effectively a protection against how we manage the landscape and assets. And one of the points I want to stress is that the person/organisation that gave you the training on national landscape has submitted an objection to this application on the basis of it not conforming with national landscape policy and the legislation. So I just want you to hold that in your mind, that the people that gave you the training objected to this application on the grounds of not being conforming to national landscape legislation. Now, we all know that planning applications have to be judged on their own merit. We often can't speculate about other alternatives for land use or asset use. However, it is relevant in these circumstances, partly because of those obligations under the national landscape to preserve and enhance. So we have to look at how an asset, in this case, the Boxted Bridge, we have to take a step procedure to it. We have to look at some of the options available to make sure that we are preserving and enhancing the national landscape. And I want to stress that because the repair option has not been fully considered. It has not been fully considered in the same way that the replacement option has been. We've jumped effectively to the replacement option, and my stance has always been that we should fully review and take into account the repair option so that we can make sure that that has been looked at in the context of what was the area of outstanding natural beauty and now is national landscape legislation. And what are the risks to the authority on this? We'll look at Manningtree Station. If we do not fully consider the options and the national landscape legislation, we risk losing a judicial review on the decision. We've heard the extensive planning policies that potentially are in breach through this application, and Dedham Vale was successful in their judicial review of Manningtree for not conforming to national landscape legislation. So while usually we say there's a risk of an applicant appeal, I would say that there's a greater risk of a judicial review appeal if we do not fully conform to that legislation. I do feel that the repair option being considered is key to that. And a repair option is an option. And that's because if you look at Essex Highways' own independent inspection report, which is a consultancy report through Cleveland, which is available on Essex Highways' website for Boxted Bridge, it concluded that the repair option was possible if public opinion was such that necessitated it. You've heard the extent of public opinion. Go on Essex Highways' website to look at the report and the conclusion of repair. It's there. And why are we widening a bridge where we're purportedly not going to have any traffic using the wider bridge? It makes no sense in the concept of national landscape. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. I will now call Clyde Woodruff, Structure Manager of Essex Highways, who's going to speak on the application. So I mentioned earlier, you will have up to 5 minutes, but don't feel obliged to take the full 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and members. I'm Clive Woodruff and I hold the position of Essex County Council Structures Manager. I have worked for ECC for nearly 35 years in their Bridges and Structures team. I've been a Structures Manager since 2012. I'm also the chair of the Eastern Region Adept Group of Bridge Managers. The ECC is directly responsible for 1,600 highway structures. Our primary duty is to ensure they are safe for the public, for the use of the public. I can assure there has been no deliberate neglect by ECC over the years to maintain this bridge. But ECC does have limited funding, which you'll understand, and there's a balancing act about which bridges can be worked on over many years. Boxted Bridge was built in 1897. In 1992, it had a low carrying assessment, which concluded the bridge was weak, 3 tons. And if it was no longer working with a U-frame action, it would be below dead weight, which meant that it would have to be closed. In the 2023 principal inspection, it highlighted major concerns with its condition, which meant that it was no longer working as a U-frame action. Therefore, the bridge was closed. ECC tries to keep the highway network open to all users, especially in this case, as we've never been able to implement a weight restriction. It would always be, the police would not been able to enforce it or wouldn't have enforced it. With a 3-ton, we normally put in a width restriction. We have been unable to do that at this location because it's on a junction. So you would not just be affecting the road it's on, but other roads as well. So we've never been able to impose a weight restriction, although it's been constantly inspected since 1992. If the committee rejects the application for the reconstruction of the bridge will remain closed. Also, just touching on the highway issues that were raised a little earlier, a road safety audit has been carried out for these highway measures, and further road safety audits will be carried out due to the detailed design stage. So the issues that were raised, I think by Mr. Paisley, have been considered and will continue to be considered. Following me, Vasilios Papademos will discuss in more detail the bridge project. He will cover the independent report that's been mentioned by Cleveland Bridge. He'll have an explanation on the load testing. There will also be an explanation of why the bridge cannot be repaired to meet current loading standards. And it also will outline why we are proposing a new bridge that will be constructed in keeping with the existing bridge. And then Peter Dawson from Place Services will present covering the planning matters. And finally, I just wanted to refer to the County Council Strategic Risk Register. The Risk Register is considered by senior managers, the Cabinet and the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee regularly. Risk SRR 104 relates to the deteriorating condition of bridges on the ECC network. The risk makes it clear that we estimate we are spending 12.8 million per annum less on bridges than we need to spend in order to maintain the current position. This is a known issue caused by a lack of availability of financial resource for the County Council. We therefore have to prioritise resources to ensure the best use of funding across Essex. The best use of resource at Boxted Bridge is to replace it to give us a new structure which is safer for the public and fit for the future. Attempting to repair is a high-risk strategy, the cost and complexity of which cannot be known unless we dismantle the structure, by which it will probably be higher, the cost will be higher than replacement, and leave us with a structure that is at high risk of damage from vehicles and is inconvenient to use. The new structure is designed to meet the current usage of the highway and to be safe to the public. And I emphasise that's our #1 priority, to ensure it's safe for users of the highway in Essex. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Woodruff. I will now call Mr. Vasilios Papademos, who has been involved in the design for quite some time. You have got 3 minutes, Mr. Papademos, and Emma will give a prompt at 30 seconds. 5 minutes, sorry, but please don't feel obliged to take the full 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Vasilios Papademos. I'm a principal engineer working within the Essex County Council structures team. In the case of Boxted Bridge, currently there is a road closure over the bridge, vehicular and pedestrian, following the findings of a principal inspection in June 2023. The navigation between the structure is also closed. During the most recent inspection in June 2023, it was noted that the corrosion on the primary and secondary elements of the bridge had progressed since the 2018 principal inspection. The riveted plate girders are exhibiting significant corrosion with section loss through the web and flange. Also, one rivet head has become detached. The riveted plate sections in the upper areas of the secondary deck elements have deteriorated further, with areas having complete loss of the bottom flange, while in other areas loss due to corrosion ranges between 15 and 45 millimeters on the bottom flange. The stiffener at midspan was also corroded completely on the east edge girder. Notable during the inspection was that the east edge girder had rotated inwards by 65 millimeters measured at midspan, and the west edge girder had rotated inwards by 30 millimeters measured at the north end. No measurements of any deflection were present in any previous inspections. At the time, we also carried out an assessment review, which confirmed the findings of the 1992 assessment of the bridge's capacity being less than dead load when U-frame action is no longer effective, which is now not considered to be effective due to the rotation of the edge girders. Cleveland Bridges were brought in as an independent consultant to determine if repairing the structure was feasible. They also highlighted the significant risk of hidden defects and concluded that the refurbished option becomes the most expensive option when risk and disruption to the local population and traveling public is considered. For example, the principal inspection findings mentioned are limited to members that can be seen, and there's potential for greater deterioration to be present in the elements which are currently hidden as part of the deck is covered in concrete. To repair the structure, all elements will have to be dismantled, rivets taken out, and either replaced or reinstated based on condition. The transverse members and channel sections will have to be completely replaced. Without dismantling the bridge, it is unknown if the edge girders could be repaired, as part of them is currently not feasible to inspect due to being covered in concrete, and the effects of the rotation will need to be fully exposed.
Mr. Pepperins, can I ask you to, if you'd slow down a little bit, because members are struggling to follow. Hold on, switch your microphone back on.
Thank you. Without dismantling the bridge, it is unknown if the edge girders could be repaired, as part of them is currently not feasible to inspect due to being covered in concrete, and the effects of the rotation would need to be fully exposed. This could not be investigated other than by largely dismantling the bridge. This introduces a great risk to both cost and program if repairs were to be approached, or if any of the structural elements could be reused, which can only be found out after the bridge has been dismantled. This would introduce significant costs with severe delays if elements are discovered to not be able to be reused and new custom members to have to be ordered. Not only could the cost potentially significantly exceed the cost of the current proposal, the structure would still be at risk of damage from vehicle impacts. The current design of edge girders are unable to withstand large caused by such impact, and the risk of impacts would be high because of the current road alignment, whereas the proposed new structure would be stronger and be at less risk of impacts because of the road alignment. Even if the bridge was repairable, the structure's load-carrying capacity would not meet current standards by using the same design members, so the structure would remain weak. The structure would not be safe to use for all vehicles. It would not extend its lifespan, as the structure is past what would be considered a design life of a structure, which is 120 years. While load testing of the current structure can be carried out, this will not help determine if the current bridge can be repaired to current highway loading, because it will only confirm at the starting of the load pass of the structure. It won't help us to know what could be reused and what would need replacing. That could only be determined by embarking on a costly and risky project. In October 2018, an option study was undertaken to explore the options available to safely manage Boxted Bridge. In addition to the 2018 option study, a feasibility study undertaken in 2020 further investigated a variety of options proposed to continue the safe operation of Boxted Bridge. During the feasibility study, all options considered in the option study were re-evaluated based on information obtained for investigations and studies undertaken at the time. Combining this information with the condition of the structure, the road alignment issues at the junction, including several strikes to the bridge edge beams, led to the decision to proceed with the option to replace the existing structure to alleviate these issues. As you can see from the planning report, the proposal is to replace the existing structure with a bespoke composite bridge deck supported on pile foundations to be placed behind the existing abutments. The existing abutments will be retained and repurposed as a mama ledge. Steel cladding will be placed in front of the reinforced concrete parapets to replicate the appearance of the existing structure. The structure will be wider than the existing Boxted Bridge, and the reconstruction will include minor highway improvements in proximity to the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Then we have Mr. Peter Dawson as last speaker. And again, you got 5 minutes. And someone will give you a prompt when there's 30 seconds left in your time.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Development Regulation Committee. My name is Peter Dawson. I work for Essex County Council's Place Services team. I'm the planning agent working on behalf of Essex County Council Highways for this application. As you will know, Place Services provide Essex County Council with specialist planning advice to help inform decision making. Terms of engagement were established in January 2022, which set out how the agent and county planning authority would work together on this application. The strict rules set out in the terms of engagement prevent any actual or perceived bias. These terms of engagement have been complied with. Each of the specialist teams within Place Services are members of their associated governing bodies. This includes the Landscape Institute, the Institute of Historic Buildings Conservation, and the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management. As a result of this, Place Services provide its advice following the various codes of conduct and standards required by these governing bodies. And for this application, Place Services has provided built heritage, ecology, arboriculture, and landscape advice. This advice has informed the evolution of the original proposals to what you see submitted today. Regarding built heritage, an objection was raised previously due to the lack of justification for the loss of the bridge and a concern over the appearance of the replacement bridge. After considering the updated justification report and the amendments made to the design of the new bridge, these previous concerns have since been addressed. Historic England did not wish to make any comments regarding the proposals. Regarding ecology, ecology consultants have reviewed the submitted ecology impact assessment relating to the key impacts on designated sites, protected and priority species and habitats, as well as the identification of appropriate mitigation measures. They also reviewed the information submitted on non-mandatory biodiversity net gains and accompanying condition assessments. Consultees were satisfied that there was sufficient ecological information available to support the determination of the application and concluded that with the appropriate mitigation measures secured, the development can be made acceptable. Naturally, England made no objection to the proposals. Regarding landscape, it was judged that the proposals have been designed to reflect the form of the existing bridge, demonstrating consideration for conserving features within the national landscape. In reviewing the application, it was considered that the surrounding area is enclosed by existing vegetation, reducing the extent of visual impacts. The landscape and visual impacts will be localized, and it was judged that the landscape has the capacity to absorb the sensitively designed bridge without conflicting with the requirements set out within Section 85 of the Countryside Rights of Way Act. On review, it was considered that the proposed development does not have a detrimental effect on the environment, the landscape, and recreational opportunities as set out in paragraph 190C, chapter 15, conserving and enhancing the natural environment of the NPPF. So in summary, the replacement bridge is 3.36 meters wider at the southern section and 2.86 meters wider at the northern section when compared to the existing bridge. This additional width allows for a dedicated footpath. The proposed replacement bridge is 0.2 meters higher than the existing bridge. The proposed replacement bridge will replicate the existing bridge's form, color, and brick specification. The proposals do not include any lighting or illumination. Consultees, including highways, historic buildings, ecology, arboriculture, and landscape, made no objections. In reference to Section 85 of the Countryside Rights of Way Act, we consider the application would not cause harm to the natural beauty of the area. This assessment is based on evidence accompanying the application. The replacement bridge will secure long-term access to the national landscape for all users, including cycling, walking, and the waterway itself. Therefore, I concur with the findings of the case officer's recommendations to approve this application.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. I will ask Tom Sycamore if there is any comments he'd like to make on the last three speakers.
Nothing really to add, Chairman, other than the first speakers further explain the justification. We've heard the repair option is most likely the most expensive in the long run. Many elements are unknown, and many would need to most likely be fully replaced anyway. That's all.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to members. You've heard quite a lot of information there, some conflicting points been made. Over to you. Who would like to go first? Councillor Garnett.
Couple of quick questions, if I may, to start with. If we make a decision today, which is opposite Suffolk's decision, what happens? And if the bridge was repaired, we've had a lot of information here would it meet all safety requirements?
I will hand over to the officer. But I understand that the determination from Baber, they are waiting for us to make a decision, and that's got no impact on what we decide today. But I will over to Tom about the safety.
Thank you, Chairman. The application before you and the information that's been included considers that if repaired, it would not meet the modern safety requirements. That's why the optioneering has considered this proposal is the only option, because it would meet those standards.
You okay with that? Councillor Giles.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I have certain doubts about several things. First of all, I'd congratulate Tom. It's a really good report, and also our engineers, because it must be galling to do exactly what they're paid to do, which is to produce a stonking, really good bridge, but just perhaps not in the right place. Were this to be put in replacement to Appleford Bridge down Braxton Wall, which of course is listed and is a chaotic and dreadful structure, I would welcome it. But I think that we probably ought to go and have a look. You know, I mean, I've been and had a look at it, and I've crossed over it many times, and it seems slightly inappropriate that we've got such a posh bridge being landed in the middle of one of our most sensitive landscapes. And equally, one would argue for the necessity of it. And I did listen very closely to Beverly McLean's elucidation on Section 85 of the Crow Act. And part of it that struck me was to conserve and enhance natural beauty. I do actually think the design plan is really good. But I do question as to whether you need to widen it, you need to put parking spaces, you need to necessarily have a public footbridge. In a sense, because it's such a defined rural bridge, it controls traffic. And you're just not going to get HGVs over it, yet it's going to be built to an HGV standard. It is actually on Colchester's local list as well, which I don't think was mentioned. And I think we really ought to take that into consideration because, of course, Appleford is listed. Why was this not, and why could it not be? And I think that traffic management could actually improve the whole layout of an existing structure or a new structure built to the same dimensions. I think it's the road improvements and the width and the greater accessibility that make this slightly controversial for me anyway. Also, I did notice in several places that it mentions on balance. Now, after 40 years in planning, whenever I hear the words on balance, I feel that there are doubts. And I have doubts about this. I'm not going to propose anything at the moment, but I do think that I'd really rather like to understand why Suffolk County Council hasn't made any representation. After all, the road improvements are on their land. And I'd really rather like to hear from Baber. It seems they've loaded all of the controversy onto our officers and onto our side. And absolutely emphasize it is no criticism of engineers or planners. They're doing what they think is best. And in most instances, I would totally accept it, in fact, welcome it. But I'm not sure it's the most appropriate design or structure for here. 6B appeals, but I'm hearing words of doubt. I looked at the report and it said £500,000 for repair with a concrete and fiberglass decking, I believe, and £1 million for a new bridge. Well, that was 2018 or 2019. I mean, you can double those figures and more. I'm now hearing that the repair is possibly going to be more than the cost of a new bridge. And that needs to be borne in mind is in a sense, aesthetic value. The setting of where it is it worth taking that into consideration? And I do think it is worth taking it. So I shall listen with interest, but I'm not going to make any recommendations at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions there for the officer? Do you want to come back on the Suffolk thing?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was just two clarifications. You mentioned, Councillor Jowers, about parking spaces. There's no parking spaces included in the proposal. There is hard standing. However, we have recommended a condition requiring measures to discourage parking, for example, post and rail fence or something of the like, which would prevent vehicles parking on those areas. The Suffolk and Baber point, yeah. So Suffolk County Council and Baber and Mid Suffolk District Councils were both consulted on the application at all stages of consultation. They have not provided formal comments. Baber and Mid Suffolk District are the determining authority for that side, and I've had communication with the planning officer on that side, and efforts have been made to keep the applications in a timeline similar to each other. I have asked Baber for most recent update and haven't not received any update in terms of when it will go to committee. That's all I can report.
Thank you, Tom. Do you want to come back?
When I get this thing on. Yeah, it's quite an interesting scenario if Baber and Suffolk would oppose this and to go against our recommendation. Where the hell does it leave us? So I really think it's essential that we do get their opinion on this, and it would, to a degree, help us.
Thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chairman.
Barker, can you hold on 1 minute? Please come in.
With regards to the point, if Baber and Mid Suffolk District Council determine differently to any decision that's taken by this committee, what will happen is that we'll be left with a situation whereby there are two conflicting planning permissions, planning decisions, which will then end up having to be appealed, so that a decision can be made as to what happens with the actual proposal.
Bristol.
Any more comments, Councillor? No? You okay with that?
I'll come back.
See you. I got you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Baber Essex bit is really what I wanted to. Why do we have a district authority on one side determining this application and a county council on the other? I think that is a very bizarre situation to have found ourselves in. But I'd like to support Councillor Jowers. The wonders of Google Maps and Google Earth. I'm looking at Boxted Bridge on my screen, and I can see very little land to actually improve that junction. There is a hedge, and there is like that much. You know, I can't see, I really don't get where you're going to find the extra land to make that junction a better junction. But I am very conflicted by the fact that, you know, we have different authorities have left. Nothing wrong with Baber and Mid Suffolk, I'm sure. But why is this decision not being made by Colchester, who are the other side of the river? And having a look at this on the ground, I think might be a very useful thing, because I can't see any space to improve the road junction.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. I don't think there was a question. Do you want any comments, Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It was just to clarify why it's Essex and not Colchester. It's included in the report on page 99 under the heading Regulation 3. It's to do because we are the Essex County Council are the highway authority. Therefore, under Regulation 3, Essex County Council as planning authority must determine where they are on the Suffolk side. Suffolk County Council are not it's not the highway authority of Suffolk making the application. Therefore, it would not go to Suffolk's County Council. It then goes to Baber. I hope that makes sense. But I have summarised it probably better on page 99 of the agenda.
Tom McCarthy, do you want to come in?
So the application has been made by Essex County Council as applicant. So the application has come before Essex County Council's County Planning Authority for to determine, as we are the applicant. On the other side, as it's not Suffolk County Council who are the applicants, it's still Essex County Council who have submitted that application. It's gone to Baber and Mid Suffolk as Suffolk County Council aren't the applicants, so they wouldn't be the determining authority.
That's quite clear. Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Barker?
It may be clear, Chairman, it seems very illogical. It is a road and a bridge which are the responsibility of Suffolk County Council. But there you go.
Councillor Steptoe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions. First of all, one of the speakers referred to the access on the bridge would be similar to the slope in a car park. I'm not clear where that it would be within the bridge itself. Is it on the north side, south side? Can officers explain where that big increase, if that's the case, is going to be within the access to the bridge?
Do you want to, yeah, let's get the other response for that. Tom?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't believe there would be a multi-story car park drop. From my translation of the or interpretation of the plan submitted, I wouldn't comment on the engineering aspect. I think it's outside of the realms of planning in that sense, in terms of being safe. But from my interpretation of the drawing, that drop would not be as severe as has been stated.
Next question, Councillor.
If I just come back on that particular point, which side will be the increase of the bridge, the north or the south side?
Tom?
I can get that answer for you, but I don't know at this very moment in time.
Okay, whilst someone looks for that, do you want to put your other question, Councillor Steptoe?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. For some particular reason, I seem to be becoming a bit of an expert on bridges. I've got a bridge in my division that people keep whacking. One of the things that I've discovered is that although there's weight restrictions and width restrictions, there's still a certain amount of right of access over those restrictions. Is that still the case in this particular instance? Although there are roads which are narrow, are there width restrictions there, and is there right of access over them for vehicles that are making deliveries in that area or similar?
Tom?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm unsure if other structures have weight restrictions. I know that all roads leading to have signage to say unsuitable for HGVs, but I'm unsure if there are weight restrictions on those roads and structures. Again, I can find that answer for you.
Councillor Steptoe?
Yes, from what I understand is the new bridge would have a weight limit for HGVs, which I'm assuming is 40 tonne. 44, just been corrected. So therefore, is there a right of access along the roads that are very narrow? Is that going to increase that?
Tom?
I think I'll go back to the point of the justification put forward by the applicant is not so that the bridge can take HGVs as the reasoning for the application. The point is that when they design a bridge, it needs to meet that weight requirement. It's not whether or not the HGVs would use the route, but the standards require them to make it capable of using the route.
That seems a bit illogical to me, but perhaps I'm missing something. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
I think the justification is that the bridge has to be built to the current standards, which are all equal regardless what, and there's no provision to address a sensitive location such as this. sadly. Still, you're the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the key aspects was asked by my colleague here, and I don't think it got a full answer, and that's to do with if the bridge was refurbished, would it meet current safety standards? And so I'm asking the question again, have you actually done an analysis on that, which might be available, to say that a refurbished bridge would not meet current safety standards? Because you clearly said that. And in terms of thinking about alternative, one of the alternatives is just to close it. And was that considered? It would depend on the amount of traffic that uses that bridge, and are there any traffic surveys that have been done to show that before it was closed, it was a much used bridge, or is it so unused? Actually, it wouldn't matter if it was permanently closed. So safety of a refurbished bridge, also perhaps safety of a copy bridge, new copy bridge, and alternative road closure.
Not that I want to paraphrase your question, but do you mean whether it was closed to traffic as opposed to pedestrian cyclist?
Yes, that would be a reasonable addition. Thank you.
Tom?
The bridge was closed in 2023 to all vehicles and pedestrians, both over the bridge and on the river. This was the decision made by the applicant following their principal inspection report, which found the bridge to be severely in danger in terms of structurally. The proposal is what's in front of us. The speaker in favour of the application has said that if the bridge cannot be replaced, then it would remain closed. It's not something that has been considered in terms of a planning judgment, but that's the understanding, that it would remain closed.
Okay, I'm not sure. I don't think it answers the question. There was several questions there. One was, do you have a view of the traffic that would be not able to then use it if it was closed permanently? Were there any traffic surveys done? And the other question, which was needed an answer in terms of, has any analysis been done as to whether a refurbished bridge could meet safety standards? I heard the statement that if you're kind of saying if this application doesn't go through, we will close the bridge. I think that's almost it's a bold statement, and that you wouldn't even consider refurbishment. Is that what you're saying? But also, have you looked at the safety of a refurbished bridge?
Tom?
On the traffic survey, no traffic survey was submitted with the planning application. So that has not been considered at this stage. Would you like to comment?
So Councillor Still, so in terms of the diversion which is in place, because the bridge is currently closed, that would have been considered when the order was put in place on closing the bridge. So it would have been a highway decision. So irrespective to this application, that would have been a decision through the closure of the bridge taken by the Highway Authority when they closed it, based, I presume, on traffic surveys and the diversion model, which would have resulted from that closure. So I understand the question, but not directly relevant to the application before you. In terms of the safety standards, the application has been put forward to meet current load standards. I think there might be a difference between load and safety. We haven't got an application before us which is sought to assess repair. So I couldn't give you an answer on whether a repair would meet safety standards. In terms of the current requirements, it would likely be a departure from standard, but that's not necessarily to say it'd be deemed, if you like, unsafe or unsuitable. There probably is, or potentially is, a solution that would be deemed safe, less than standard, but that is not what we have before us at the moment. So I couldn't give you a definitive steer on whether it's possible. It would be a requirement that we would have to make the request to the applicant to consider that and come forward and say either whether it was possible or not possible.
Yeah, only to say, really, I think a statement was made that a refurbished bridge would cost more, but it's an unevidence statement if you haven't done an analysis of a safe refurbishment. So I don't see how you can claim it would cost more because you wouldn't know.
Come back, Tom.
I'm not sure if it was a statement made on our behalf. It was made by the County Planning Authority. Then please disregard that statement because the cost effectiveness, cost benefit is a planning consideration, but something which would be, or has been mentioned in the report, but something which, if planning permission was granted, obviously be a decision for the Highway Authority to decide whether to move forward that based on the assessment. So yeah, I apologise if that was conveyed. That's something which we'll leave there.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Barry Aspinall next.
Thank you, Chairman. A question of councillors or the council authority meeting with the other authority. In Brentwood, we met with councils from the other side in Kent when we were talking about the Lower Thames Crossing. And it was very useful gathering. And there was an exchange of views and an explanation by officers of why things were being proposed and why things weren't. And it was very useful outcome. I can't see why we can't meet with that other authority or have a pre-meet with them before we came in here, or an exchange of some way. At the moment, Councillor Giles is quite right. What happens if we make a decision and they reverse it the other side, or they don't agree with us? To me, it doesn't make sense, but that's me. On a question of the actual bridge that's there, I sat through an hour and a half presentation the other day, listening to the new legislation that's coming in to protect places of outstanding beauty like this. What is the point of that if we don't agree with it, if we ignore it, or if we don't take any advice from it whatsoever? If this was the only bridge across the Stour at this point, I would think that we would have to take some sort of action. As it isn't, I'm told, and we can get a fire appliance from one side to the other readily, I don't see the actual need to demolish and rebuild a new one. Would it not be beneficial to reconstruct or repair this existing bridge, do not build a new one, and take our time over it? As it's been closed for 2 years, either side of the river haven't dissolved into chaos. Something has happened to their lives to continue without too much disruption, unless I'm totally wrong, and I'll be told that. So that is an opinion, not necessarily needing an answer from an officer for a point of view, but I really do urge us to meet with Suffolk or the authority, the other side, to get an opinion from them. This is the only committee on the council where members have an individual view and vote, apart from full council. Everything else is controlled by the cabinet members, who I'm surprised isn't here, as it's his application that's going forward. So, yeah, we are a planning committee, we're not a finance committee, and we're certainly not the highways committee. And so we need to think on that when we make our views on this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Tom, there wasn't a question as such, but did you want to pick up points? And the one question I picked up was that there could be a question is, are you aware of any complaints by people who have had to put up with the closure of the bridge for the last 2 years?
Thank you, Chairman. On that point, yes, representations have been received, that it is an inconvenience, of course, that the bridge is closed. That has been received. On the meeting with Baber and Mid Suffolk District Council, there have been multiple meetings throughout the application process where we have sought revised design details for us to consider it to be acceptable. The Baber planning officer was in attendance in those meetings. So there was input from both Baber and Essex planning officers when negotiating with the applicant on details and design.
Councillor Aspinall, do you want to come back?
Yeah, it wasn't really about the design of the actual structure or the highways. It was the fact that we needed an input from those members, the other side of the river, on their views of the whole concept and planning application. I know the design feature is important if it's going to go down the road, excuse the pun, of replacement, but that's not the whole problem here, is it? It's the only area in Essex of outstanding national beauty, and we're considering taking one. The application is to take away one of the outstanding features there and replace it, in a nutshell.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. The next speaker, it's Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I'm very proud to be a Colchester councillor, so I know the area of the outstanding natural beauty, and we ought to regard that as precious. And I've got a couple of questions at the end, but a couple of comments first of all that I wanted to make to get off my chest is that I'm a rail engineer, retired rail engineer, and I know what building a bridge means to the surrounding area and how much mess is made. And I think Anne Brown said it, it will take years to recover. It actually take, in my opinion, decades to recover from that sort of work. But if it's needed, you're saying it's needed, but I'm going to question, if I can, that need. Why is there no latitude to actually not build to a 40-ton minimum standard, 44 minimum standard? Why do we have a policy, or why is there a national policy that says you have to build to that when it's not needed? This is a rural setting. It's an area of beautiful areas with willow trees and a river. Why is there no latitude to reduce that? And why have we never considered over the years, Chairman, to actually put a priority on that bridge, a priority one, you know, there's loads in Essex, or a traffic light system that actually reduces the impact, the use of that bridge? I've looked at the Boxted neighbourhood plan. 1,365 people live in Boxted, it says, in 2011. It's not those rural roads. Nobody's being disadvantaged at the moment because it's closed. But even when it was open, obviously it was not a lot of use. So not a lot of users use that, just local people. So why are we doing a 44-ton build when it's not needed? Have we any latitude to reduce that? And to give you some indication how I'm feeling, Chair, at the moment, I would only support a deferral or objection. That's how I feel. And I'm happy to propose that once the debate's finished.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I don't think it was a question there, but do you have any comments on Councillor Harris's?
Thanks, Chairman. No comment other than the Dedham Vale National Landscape has been considered. And I just reiterate the point that we have sought council advice on Section 85.
I think the one question that could have been on there is the why is there not an alternative to do lesser standards of the 40 tons?
I'd probably go back to the report. The applicant, as the Highway Authority, has gone through that process. Sorry to repeat. They have gone through an optioning process. They've determined, based on the condition and the elements of the structure, the uncertainty of unknown elements, the cost to investigate these elements, and there's no guarantee that these elements would be salvageable and are not beyond repair. they have come forward with this proposal. I take the point. We have considered the proposal in front of us and considered in a planning judgment that the recommendation for approval is appropriate. But I do take your point.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, you want to come?
So, Chair, so there is no costed or even idea of a plan, a repair, that what it would cost in physical, no experts who are able to give that indication that that's a feasible option, alternative to this, with a timeline and maybe a cost to it?
Tom?
Again, it's something that is outside of the realms of planning, really. It's understood that there would be, a brief to the Highways Cabinet member to discuss budgets beforehand. The planning application has subsequently then come to us. If permission was to be granted, I'm sure there's a further brief to the Cabinet which would take place. But again, this is not considered to be a planning matter.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having a second go. Councillor Harris has brought out some of the points I was going to raise. Is, here we are in the middle of the country, a lovely place, lovely landscape, a nice old bridge, and suddenly the council wants to put in a monstrosity that takes 40-ton vehicles. And that's the question I was going to ask Councillor Harris. You're telling us there's nothing between. So any bridge that has to be replaced today has to comply with a 40-ton load going across it, which is an attraction for larger vehicles. I know there's no narrowing, no widening of all the country lanes, but it's they will find a way through it. The opponents have come up with Mr. Morton, wasn't it, who's an engineer, and he says it can be repaired. Yet our engineers tell it can't be repaired, or at least not to standard. Why do we need to go to a Rolls-Royce bridge when we don't need a Rolls-Royce bridge in the middle of the country? We're probably if 20 cars a day pass over it, And the other point I was going to raise is that over the years it's been inspected, and it's gone, everything that we talked about, 3-ton limit, that we don't need the 3-ton limit. And suddenly one night or one day, you've closed it. You've closed it for pedestrians, you've closed it to cyclists. There's no weight there on cyclists and pedestrians, and you closed it to river traffic. In the last 2 years, it's not fallen down, which I would have expected it to have done with that sort of decision to be made. And okay, I'm sort of not really questioning. What I've heard today, it's neither needy nor necessary to have a new bridge there.
Don't think there was a question there at all. Councillor Farragut.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to say, obviously the main points here, to me anyway, are the safety as put forward by the officers and the heritage of the bridge. So if we were building, if there was no bridge there today, we wouldn't build the existing bridge now. We would look to build a bridge similar to the one being proposed. But it does seem, and I must say, when you look at the design of the proposed, it does look very in keeping with the existing bridge from afar anyway, and apart from the lack of the humpback, it's obviously flatter, etc. But I do think it is a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut if we built, a 44-ton bridge when, hardly any cars go over it at all. But I do fear that if we did build it, build it and they will come, HGVs. They do use these sort of bridges. I've got one in Kelvedon on Malden Road, which is lorries are getting stuck there. And then similarly on Hanover Bridge in Fearing, they do use it. But from a heritage point of view, this is a quiet road, as Councillor Giles said. You know, if this was a main road, if this was, you know, the A12 or something, obviously we would fix it. Or if it was a B road going to the A12, we would look to replace it. But considering its use so infrequently, from a heritage perspective, I think we should try to protect it. And you know, you go to North America, they rip down things. There's no heritage there. In this country, we try to protect our heritage. And in this case, I think on the balance, we should try to protect it. Thanks.
Don't think there was a question there, Tom. Was any comments on that? Councillor Thorogood, you can come back.
Yeah, I did have one. Just looking at the pack that we were given, obviously the bridge is closed. So this is my question. And it said there's CCTV there and it looks closed, but I imagine that pedestrians and cyclists are still using it. Do you have any information that they are still using it? And is there any scope, if the bridge was kept, to use it for cyclists and pedestrians only? Thanks.
That's a proper question.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if cyclists or pedestrians use it. I would assume they probably do. Yeah, you can see on Street View that you can quite easily move a barrier or a cone, but I don't have any factual evidence of that, obviously. Sorry, what was the second part of your question? Apologies.
If it was kept, could it be for pedestrians and cyclists only?
I'd have to say I can't comment. I'm not an engineer and I don't know. That's not what's been proposed. So we've only considered this proposal. I'm sure a highway officer could answer that question, but I would not be able to.
I'm going to ask Ms. Musser to come in, our legal service manager.
Sorry. Just with regards to the discussions that have been had, just thought it might be helpful to just, as a little reminder in terms of the fact that we're here as Development Regulation Committee in terms of to consider from a planning perspective in terms of the planning application that has been put before you. The planning application that's been put before you is in respect of a new bridge rather than the repair option, and that those are things that the Highway Authority, who is the applicant, would have considered and have considered in putting forward their application to Planning Committee. But what's being considered today should be the application that is in front of you to consider the material considerations for that.
Which is a full replacement of the bridge. Councillor Barker, not the next.
A request, if I could, Chairman. We've got lots of pictures of the bridge from the side. We don't have in our pack the road level viewpoint from the planning application. Would it be possible for the officers to look it up? I've got it on my screen here and show us on the screen the road level viewpoint as proposed by Essex County Council. I think it's a very telling picture because it is so very different from what we've got now.
Is that something that can be done, Tom? Okay, whilst you're looking, I'll go to Councillor Septo again.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to repairs to the bridge, I'm assuming that the repairs would not have to meet the 44-ton standard. Is that correct in the first instance? Because I'm sure it was never built to carry 44 ton. What is the current limit of the bridge?
I think the repair option is not in front of us. That's what Mrs. Musser just very eloquently. If members seek to do something else, more information about the repair option, that's something that we need to kind of think about. But what's in front of us is the full replacement of the bridge. Councillor Barflin. Okay, sorry. We go to Councillor Barker again. I think we got the viewpoint.
This was submitted in the proposal as a proposed road level viewpoint. This was submitted before the slight changes to the design, but it's, yeah, relatively accurate. That's looking north from the south side.
Do you want to make any comments on that?
Urbanisation, Chairman.
I just add as well the earlier point on which side was raised. It's the north side slightly raised, but not to the extent that's been described, is the opinion of the planning officers.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Bafflin.
Thank you, Chairman. The legal officer has slightly beaten me to it anyway, but I will say it, that we are here to make a decision on the application as it is in front of us. I understand why why councillors are asking why ifs and buts, etc. But if you was on the district council and somebody wanted to knock down a house and they wanted to build a 5-bedroom house, you wouldn't ask them, why don't you want to build a 2-bedroom bungalow? And it's on that same kind of path. And officers have done, to be fair, a really excellent job on this, but they are being asked questions of planning officers that they have nothing to do with, have no idea, and it's not in front of us. So I think we need to just come back to the recommendation in front of us and the application in front of us. It may not be what we want or what we think, and we may have other ideas. We'll all be specialists in bridge building by the time this has been finished, but we're here to do and make a decision on the application in front of us. And I think that's what we should do, Chairman. Thank you.
Again, I don't think there was a question there.
Well, thank you, Chairman, and Councillor Bowers-Flint is absolutely right. It's that this is a quasi-judicial committee and it's bound by law, and we do not necessarily consider finance or money. What we do consider is, going back to the issue of Section 85 of the Crow Act, has to conserve or enhance natural beauty, it has to avoid harm and must go beyond normal. Now, had we in front of us a brand new all singing, all dancing exact replacement for the small bridge, I'd have been more than happy with that. But I heard that dreadful sound of urbanisation, and of course this is absolutely the wrong place where this needs to be. That is a planning issue, actually. It used to be street scene, and particularly in AOMP, I don't know what this new designation is, national landscape. They keep changing. In a sense, it's a terrible cliche. I think this is a bridge too far. It's too good for here. It's too all singing, all dancing. It brings in too much road restructuring. It's not appropriate. So I did hear Councillor Harris say defer, and it's something I hate doing, but I think we need as a committee to go and have a look at this. And if we defer, it means that we don't reject this. That's the option that Councillor Bowers-Flint is putting, and she's right, is what do? We approve, which there's an awful lot of unease in this committee, I can feel, reject, or go and have a look and say, could we tweak this to make this work better than we think it's going to? And therefore I'll second Councillor Harris, as I suspect it was a proposal, and suggest that we defer, have a site visit. I know it's the worst option because it puts loads more work on officers, but I think they will have heard quite clearly that not just the 8,500 people on the petition, and not just the fact that Colchester Planning Committee turned it down, and not just the fact that we're a bit uneasy about it, or with the Crow Act being modified. I think that I'd also like very much to hear even ad hoc comments from Baber Because I think they are imposing the decision on us and saying, okay, whatever you do, tough bananas, you know, you're the ones who are going to take the flak on this. That's not a planning issue, Ms. Musa, I know that. But nonetheless, it will weigh on us. And I think that it's slightly delinquent that we haven't had a consensus. And, you know, it would be useful if we could get that. So my proposal, or secondment stands. I'm sure, David, you did. You did. Okay. Then. So I'll leave it at that, Chairman.
Good. Councillor Harris, do I assume that you moved?
Yes, Chairman, if I may. If Councillor Jowers, can I both agree that a brief couple of A4 pages report on the optioneering of what a repair would look like, just some experts' opinion on a couple of A4 pages so we know what we're looking at when we go on site.
Okay, so the grounds for deferral is to explore, even though we've heard from engineers that the option of repair could prove too costly, but nevertheless, with Councillor Giles?
I didn't make it as clearly as I could have done. I would be more than happy to see a brand new bridge with new abutments and God knows what else, even fake rivets on it, if it absolutely mirrored what they've got there now, without the massive road improvements. And I think they've lived with it long enough. I wouldn't mind seeing any sort of serious accident fatality figures, whatever. So I haven't seen any in here. And I think that would be underlying the fact that we defer. We can have a look, and then it's a sort of a semi-proposal. But that's got to go back to cabinet, financial issues and whatever. But that would be my preferred option.
Okay, so far we've got a motion of defer proposed by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor John Giles, on the basis that we will need more information on the repair and whether the design can be tweaked to achieve a smaller structure. Is that correct?
Mirror structure.
Mirror structure. So far, I will not close the debate yet because I've got Councillor Garnett. And so before Councillor Garnett, I've got Councillor Ms. Mercer.
Just with regards to, in terms of the deferral, as I mentioned previously, in terms of the option and the application that was put in front of committee is not to do with repair, it's to do with the new bridge. So in terms of any deferral, for example, for a site visit, because that's something that has been mentioned.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe, you haven't spoken yet before I go to Councillor Garnett. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. Like Councillors Harris and Jowers, I live in Colchester. My division is there. I know Dedham Vale fairly well. It's where local people go to walk their dogs, cycle, enjoy. I don't like this new description, national landscape, area of outstanding natural beauty is what I think of it as. Now, what we have is 3 single track roads leading up to this bridge. These roads are signposted as being unsuitable for heavy goods vehicles. And yet we're told we need a bridge that is suitable for heavy goods vehicles, and not a single track bridge, a 2-lane bridge. I think the need for that is something of a red herring. Also, we're being asked to make a decision to demolish a bridge that can be repaired. We don't know the full implications of that at the moment, and replaced with one that is substantially 50% bigger. I think it's significant that Colchester Council, who are a major stakeholder in this, they strongly oppose this application. And to quote them, we would lose a significant heritage asset. It lacks clear and convincing justification. It's contrary to statute and national local planning policies and fails to take into account environmental considerations. Now, I won't say too much more. Councillor Harris rather beat me to it. I was going to propose deferring until we've had a proper site visit, because I think this committee is currently in an invidious situation where we're being asked to vote on something that is obviously a hugely contentious issue to thousands of people who live in that area, numerous stakeholders, and I don't think we're in a position today to make that decision. So I'd also like to see if it's possible to, in the meantime, look into whether it is possible, if it came to it, the bridge could be closed to all vehicles apart from cyclists and walkers if it came to it, if that was like a final solution we had to have for it. And yes, so I would certainly vote to defer subject to a site visit. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll probably losing the argument here then, because I'm like Councillor Giles, I'm against deferral, but unless we're going to gain something from it, I can't see that we're going to gain anything from it. I'll say what I was going to say is that I personally prefer to refuse it. The officers know they've got to have to come back with an alternative, and we also have a site visit, because I think we can all go to Suffolk, but we've seen lots of pictures today. I'm not sure we're going to gain apart from probably the atmosphere. So my argument would be to refuse it, because that's what's in front of us rather than defer it. Deferral, unless it's something really positive, I don't know. But I wouldn't vote against it either.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Councillor Steele. Sorry, can you put in mind?
I think I'm going to speak against deferral as well. I think we've got enough information to make a decision one way or the other. But what I would ask, because it seems to me where we are because Highways have made the decision that they're going to close it, not repair it, and therefore the option in front of us is to replace it with something. And I don't agree. I don't think it looks a monstrosity, although having then seen the picture, I understand the comment about urbanisation. The question I've got is, and this is one of the reasons why I don't think we should defer it, because either this is right or not. Is there an option to build a lesser, more appropriate bridge in this location, and still meet safety standards of some sort, or is the only option we have for a bridge the one on the table? Are there we've spoken about lesser options. There's no point in going and looking at the site and say, oh yeah, we want a smaller bridge. If you tell us here and now we can't have a smaller bridge, it's got to be this or closed. So clear question, is there an option of a lesser, lower weight limit or whatever, narrower bridge that mirrors the current one but is new?
The answer is no, because the application in front of us is what it is for full replacement to the standards that we've been presented.
I think okay, there isn't an option in front of us. Does highway safety standards of Essex highway safety standards, would it allow such a lesser option, or are we all going to sit here? You're going to tell me now again, aren't you? But are we all going to sit here with we haven't got a lesser I won't use the word option. Well, what's the point in going and looking at the site if we then come back and say, well, we'll have a smaller bridge, and then these guys say, no, you can't have a smaller bridge?
I'm going to ask Matt Bradley from Essex Highway to.
I think I mean the codes which are being referred to within the supporting documentation refer to the design manual for roads and bridges and the Euro codes, which are the appropriate documents to design new structures to, and that's what Essex County Council are working with here.
Right. Does that answer my question? I kind of think it does, actually. But
can we start again? Because we didn't hear you the full answer that Matt.
Yes, sorry. I was going to say that they're the standards that are being presented, that we're working to here. Appreciate everything that's been said, but they're the standards which Essex County Council are compelled to work with in this particular case. And obviously, if a new structure is going in, it's appropriate that it meets all other, safety requirements in terms of visibility improvements and that kind of thing. If we're looking at a planning application that was coming in, for example, we're often tested about whether there's sufficient visibility and whether that's a reason for refusal of an application. There's an opportunity here to make some minor local improvements to those kinds of things for turning circles and visibility in conjunction with the new bridge, and which is being built to a code which we've got no option to defer from.
Councillor.
Okay, I'm not sure how much that helps. It's like the analogy of if it was a planning application for a house until they put in one for a 3-story house, and you refused it, they can come back with a 2-story house, can't they? But I don't know whether they can come back with a 2-story house or not. So I'm not sure.
I'm going to ask Ms. Musa to come in on the deferral proposal.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to deferral, subject to whatever decision members want to come to, if members did vote against, were minded to vote against officer recommendation, the matter would need to be deferred in any event, so that the reasons for refusal could be brought to the next committee to be voted on.
Thank you, Ms. Musa. I just want to clarify with the mover and proposer of the deferral, on what basis do you want to defer the application?
Well, for me, for further information, and because this is such a drastic, I think, move for outstanding beauty, I think it needs the other option. I would support a rejection or a deferral as long as we get towards the area that we're looking at and find that we can got an alternative option to what's in front of us. I don't think what's in front of us I'm worried about and concerned about.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm also more concerned about the implications it has on Section 85, from a planning point of view, and also that there has not been any of the options really of building a new bridge, which logically would appear to be the best way of going about it. Build it as high a standard as can. Probably could build it up to 44 ton, but to leave it as a single lane bridge without any of the fairly major changes to the village scene. So we weren't given that option. I'd like to know whether we can or we can't. And also, I really do want to know what Baber and Suffolk's implications are, because we can go ahead with this, but right from the centre of the bridge, it's theirs.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm more inclined to go for refusal on the basis that it is out of keeping with the area. In doing so, I think we are saying back to the applicant, go back, rethink this, whether it is repair or whether it is a smaller scheme that's more in keeping with the situation. That by refusing it, that's what we're saying to the applicant. At this stage, I think it's out of keeping with the area and not appropriate.
Thank you. Ms. Musa, if we defer the application together with a site visit, and what the debate it's kind of led to is the provision of extra information on the repair option, which has been amply explained by officers that is an unknown quantity. What grounds can we defer the application as opposed to refusal to try and keep the thing still on track?
Sorry, Chairman. So on the deferral point, if members were concerned with the optioneer and didn't feel they had a sufficient justification or need argument to conclude that they were content with the preferred option which has been put forward in the application, potentially you could say ask for a deferral and for further consideration of the optioneering to conclude that the application you got before you is the preferred approach to give you additional comfort. The deferral obviously wouldn't be necessarily the correct route if you were mindful to say that you consider the replacement to be unacceptable and you're therefore questioning the optioneering per se, and saying that this proposal is fundamentally unacceptable, then your route would be refusal. So you could go for a deferral if you wanted further clarification to give you comfort that the application you've got before you is the preferred approach, and the optioneering, if you like, seeks to, you're looking for a further enhancement of that optioneering to further understand those options which has led to the application before or the proposal before you. But if it is that you're mindful that the proposal before you is unacceptable for whatever reasons you feel, then the route would be refusal. Oh yeah, the deferral. So that the vote against the officer recommendation, deferral for us to come back with reasons for refusal for you to then to ratify.
Clear as mud. Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my colleague here has just asked a very good question. If we refuse this, we have to refuse it on planning grounds. Do we risk an appeal situation by our own highways department? Or if it is refused, did I hear right by our legal officer that it would be deferred anyway afterwards if it's turned down? Because what do highways do? Have they got the power to say, yeah, well, if you don't provide a new bridge, this one is going to have to be closed and we will force a new one on you due to the road network demands? Is that an option that they have? But if it is refused, what do highways do?
Right, procedurally, if committee refuses the application today against the officer's recommendation, we cannot be, it's got to come back to our next committee or the one after with the reasons to agree the reasons for refusal. We can actually, if committee is minded to refuse today, we can highlight the reasons on which we think we want to go against the officer's recommendation. But to defer, as we have heard from Tom, we can actually ask for further information on the options that have been put in front of us, and then we'll come back to committee. And if committee is not happy with those options, then the route will be to refuse. But if the option that they come back then meets the required level of information the committee wants, then the committee can make a decision on those bases. So Councillor Jazz and Councillor Septo, do you want to come back?
Yeah, Chairman, I'm just a little bit confused by what you've just said. If we defer, and in effect we're asking for additional information, the information that we've been asking around is what would be the cost of repair, which is not relevant to this application. So why would that, I don't see how that works. If we defer it, they can then come back with that information because we're back where we started. Perhaps I'm just getting confused.
From my understanding is if we defer on the basis that committee would like some further information on the options in front of us, including the repair options, that would then come back to committee with further information on that. Am I clear on that?
So obviously the applicants in the room today, they are obviously be mindful on hearing what's being said. If you was to defer on the basis of wanting additional information, it'll be on the basis that you feel that the need or the justification hasn't been fully explored. So effectively you're questioning what's been submitted and asking for further information to come to the conclusion as it sits as the application at the moment. On the back of that information, you would then be able to make a decision on the application as it sits before you for the replacement of the bridge, but that would be at the whatever committee after we get the additional information, and we probably would do a public consultation on that information as well. So there would be a delay, but then hopefully you would feel that you have the sufficient information to make a decision on it, but there'd be no guarantee that that would necessarily include the financial information. It'll be based on what the applicant submits to us. It may be that we're having this debate 2 months down the line with the same questions and the answers haven't been given, haven't got the answer to, but you're giving the applicant the opportunity to address what you feel the weaknesses are in the need argument as it stands.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's much clearer. I'll go to the proposer and the mover of the deferral then. Is that something that you would be happy to consider? I've got you, Councillor Septe.
Yes, I think it would, Chairman, because make it crystal clear, I very rarely, and here, you know, after 40 years doing planning committees, go against officer recommendation. It, you know, I don't like it one little bit, but I think on this one, they've done us, you know, I've said it before, they've done a sterling job and it's brilliant, but not here. It's not the appropriate one. And actually, we weren't shown an option for replacement like for like, brand new. That's not actually there. And just to indicate the fact that we shouldn't be looking at financial issues, yet in the report, the 2018 figures are shown. So, you know, we have to take that into consideration. But in answer to your question, yes, I would rather go for a deferral than a straight refusal because it goes against the grain of what this committee's done. I can't. Maybe twice in the last 20 years. It's not excluding it. Other members perfectly happy to propose it and see, but I feel uneasy about it. So I'd still continue with Councillor Harris's proposal.
Councillor Harris, are you up with that?
Yes. First in that way, I think, and then we can come back and we know better the options that we've been presented with, because I don't think we've got enough in front of us at the moment to do anything but to either refuse or defer.
Okay, last word from Councillor Septo and Councillor Steele. Councillor Septo first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to make sure I've got it clear, if we defer and any information that then comes back at a subsequent meeting will then become material considerations, whether that be costs or anything like that.
Now, the information in front of us is up to the applicant. The applicant is in the room to whether he wants to adjust the proposal or not is up to the applicant. We've asked him for some more information on the options to repair the bridge. That's all we're asking. And that's why they defer. Whether the information comes back and the committee is happy with it or not is a different debate that the committee will have when it comes back. Is it clear? Councillor Steele.
Just on the deferral then, I hear that the deferral is on the basis of coming back with cost information on repair, perhaps even safety information on repair. But I still feel it would be useful, and maybe you kind of half answered this, but it would be useful if also information was forthcoming on whether a lesser mirrored option could be included in that deferral. So if it means an amendment, I'd like to propose that it includes also any other option that might be more suitable to this area.
I think that's quite reasonable, and I think the applicant's in the room and is listening. So on that basis, we have got a proposal for a deferral, which has been moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Giles, on the basis that the committee would like some more information on the options to the repair things. Are we quite clear? And
apologies. So not just the repairs, it's the need. So to showcase the need and the justification for the proposal that's been put forward.
Okay. Do members feel their site visit is also helpful for the committee to understand the logistics? Yeah. Okay. You've been outvoted, sorry. Right, members, all those in favour of the proposal, please show. The deferral. And all those against? And don't think there's any abstention, is there? No?
Thank you, Chairman. That was 9 for and 2 against. So the proposal for deferment is carried.
Okay, thank you very much, members. We will now have a 5 minutes break and then we will do our next. I would like to thank the contributors to the meeting and wish you a good weekend. Thank you. debate, and we've now got our second application. Agenda item 5 is mineral and waste 5.1 Brightlingsea Quarry in the Morrison's Lane, Brightlingsea CO70SB, to consider continuation development without compliance with condition 4 and 7 of the planning permission ESS 3915TEN to allow an extension of time to complete the mineral extraction and site restoration. That's with Tom Sycamore again. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. This application seeks to vary conditions 4 and 7 of the extant planning permission to allow an extension to the deadline for completion of mineral extraction and site restoration at Brightlingsea Quarry. The site lies on the Brightlingsea Peninsula between the River Colne and Alresford Creek in a primary agricultural area. There are European designated sites located within 1 kilometre, and the site itself lies within the coastal protection belt. The town of Brightlingsea is located to the east of the site. The site is accessed via Mouvrons Lane, which is a narrow lane off of the B1029. You can see my mouse cursor. This is the B1029. And the site access Mouvrons Lane begins here and follows around and enters the site just here. The closest residential properties are Hall Farm Bungalow, and just here on Mouvrons Lane, Ford Farm Bungalow and Ford Farmhouse, also on Mouvrons Lane. Much of the site has already been restored. The remaining working parts of the site can be split into 2 halves. The eastern side, shown A and C on this diagram. This site is operated by Brett Aggregates Limited. Mineral extraction has been completed in these areas and has been restored. The western side is operated by SRC, who are the applicant of this application, areas B and E on the drawing, where mineral still remains to be extracted. Condition 4 of the extant permission requires the entire site to be fully restored by the 31st of January 2026. The applicant has undertaken a review of the remaining mineral and void space, and at the current working rate considers that the full restoration of the site would not realistically be achievable until April of 2029. The proposal therefore seeks to extend the deadline to the 20th of April 2029. Condition 7 requires all plant and machinery used in connection with the development, so the mineral extraction, to be removed by December 31st, 2024. So this proposal also seeks to extend this deadline to October 2028, when they consider that all plant and machinery related to mineral extraction will be no longer needed. Mineral extraction and restoration in this location is already considered to be established and accepted. The applicant states that the extension is required due to delays caused by a transfer of permits and completion of lease agreements when the western half of the site was transferred to SRC to operate, as well as a reduced demand for aggregates and availability of waste material for restoration during and after the COVID pandemic. It is considered that without such an extension of time, the remaining mineral would become sterilised, which would reduce the Essex sand and gravel land bank provision. The site would also be unable to achieve the agreed restoration plan as shown on screen. The extension is considered to be acceptable in principle and is needed in order for the site to be adequately restored in accordance with the plan. Representation has been received that the existing site creates issues for local residents and users of the local highway network, including deposition of mud and debris from HGVs onto Mouvrons Lane and the B1029, as well as issues of dust and noise from the site. The extant permission does have conditions in place to control and mitigate against such impacts. The planning authority has enforcement powers should any planning condition be breached, and enforcement action is available if considered necessary, and if a breach is identified. At this time, all complaints have been investigated to date by the council's planning enforcement team, and no breach of condition has been identified. The site also employs a road sweeper along Move One's Lane during severe weather. It's considered that the existing conditions are adequate to control the impacts of the development, and any reported breach or complaint can be investigated accordingly should they arise. The proposal would extend potential impacts for a further 3 years, though this is considered to be temporary and not above existing levels, and are required to allow the site to be adequately restored. The site also employs a wheel washer, as seen in the top photo here. Additional informatives have been recommended to encourage the operator to take further care and attention when working. For example, tipping material slower when restoring the site to prevent slamming tailgates. It is not considered that the proposal would exacerbate or increase any impacts above what is currently experienced. The proposal is considered to be acceptable from a landscape, historic and ecological perspectives, and in accordance with local planning policies. The application is therefore recommended to be approved, subject to conditions and the completion of a deed of variation to the extant Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I understand the addendum has got a slight change in the on page 140 in the recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was condition 5 did not refer to the current. So there's the extant permission is a reference 39/13. We have another planning decision which was made, but subject to Section 106, which is yet to be signed and agreed. So it refers to that decision in the condition now.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, any comments? Councillor Giles.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I know this one well, basically from the last minerals plan, and I have absolutely no problems with this at all. It stacks up, it makes sense. The conditions imposed are reasonable, and we need the ballast. We've done this before with Wivenhoe Quarry and others. See no problems with it, therefore I'll recommend permission.
Councillor Septo.
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
All those in favour, please show.
Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom, for your marathon presentation today. And well done. My congratulations on both of your reports. Excellent. Well done. We go to agenda item 6, which is enforcement and its enforcement planning control update, the quarterly report that we normally get to us. This is for noting, for information, but if any members has any further queries, please feel free to contact Sean Long, who I'm sure will be very happy to oblige. And I see that Browningsea quarry is on there, and as you reported on, no breaches of planning were found. We then go to agenda item 7, which is the stats. Very busy department. We've got 94% of major and 100% of minor, so well done to your team, Tom McCarthy days. For everyone's information, by the way, I should have said this at the beginning, but Tom McCarthy is now standing in as Richard Greaves, who left us last committee, as we all know, and best wishes to you, Tom, for your new role. Baptism of fire. It's not too many scars. I'm going to go home with too many scars, either of you. Well done. So the date of the next meeting is Friday, 23rd of May. Agenda item 9, urgent business. Well, I have something really that I would like to announce. It's Councillor Giles' birthday today, and he is 80 years old. Well done. I've known Councillor Giles for a lifetime, and you know it's great. It's great that you know you've had your health issues and you've been tested and tested and tested, and you're still here with us, and I'm still here with you, which is great. And we wish you a very, very happy birthday, John. And I've got a bottle of champagne which I left behind, but you'll get it next time I see you.
Thanks. It's days like this that gives me eternal youth.
And I got to say, you know how to live, like to spend your birthday, you know, in the council chamber for committee meeting. Ladies and gents, members, thank you very much for your